All right, we are rolling. Adam Shin, welcome. Good to see you again.
Mike, wonderful to see you.
Appreciate you being on. Look, Adam is, as you guys know, Mark England, who joined recently from Procabulary. Adam and Mark are co-founders of that system and Enlifted coaches. So we've got a great segue here from Mark was an amazing guest recently. Adam, I know you've been on a similar human optimization journey across your life, at least the last couple decades, like I have. So I'm super excited to talk today.
Pleasure is all mine, Mike.
Love it. Well, hey, let's start with that. Human optimization is a huge topic. Self work. I hear it said often that the greatest work a man can ever do is work on himself. That's self discovery, self mastery, as I like to call it in my journey and my brand. Um, this all ties back to the language that's going on inside of our head and coming out of our mouths, right? And that's what you guys do, I believe. One of the biggest parts you guys touch on quite frequently in that, maybe as a starting place, is the victim mentality. So why don't we start there? And I do want to ask, as part of that, if you lead us into it, is the victim mentality the flip side or related to um, what do you call it when people can't believe that they're as successful as they are?
Oh, the
The
imposter
imposter
syndrome.
syndrome.
Yeah, there's
Yeah,
some of that ties into it. Yeah, I'll take a step back, and then we'll get there to the victim
perfect.
mentality. I like how you introduced this segment with the idea of self mastery, and I love the fact that that's the title of your podcast.
Right.
And I thought about it today in a very interesting way. It's the first time I thought about it this time. Well, I found it interesting. We'll see if the listeners find it interesting. It's this concept of being a winner, and I was saying to myself, like I was doing something, and I said to myself, I go, come on, live that winner lifestyle, be a winner, and stop being a loser. And a lot of people take offense to those types of terms these days, which is funny. And I believe the way that the offense is taken is because they see it as a zero sum game, one, and number two, they see it as the race is between you and other people. But and when you and I, people like you and I and Mark, when we use the term winner and loser, it's because we want to see ourselves as winning against the loser within us.
Right.
I see it as an internal struggle. It's the did winner Adam win today, or did loser Adam win today slash lose today, right?
Right.
So that shift of seeing yourself as this potential winner and loser in your own life, I find to be really interesting because it goes back to that Jordan Peterson quote of that's very famous now of, don't compare yourself to who someone else is today. Compare yourself to I'm sorry, I screwed that up. Don't compare yourself to who someone else is today. Compare yourself to who you were yesterday.
Right.
And I find that such an empowering quote, and that we're continually improving, we're iterating, just like software, like the app that updates on your phone, where it's a new iteration of the lesser app that existed, 2 months ago or 2 weeks ago. And so that iteration process is part of the antidote to the victim mentality in a lot of the ways, because like, again, it's instead of being external focused where I'm looking at other people and I want to win and they lose. No. That's the opposite of victim and perpetrator, would be a tyrant and a victim, right? So I'm actually, I don't want to be tyrannical over other people. I want to be encouraging, and I want to be a positive iterative force in my own life. If anything, I want to win versus the loser me, because I know all the loser me that is in me. I'm very aware of that. I understand those habits. I've lived with that person for 40 plus years now, so I know all the tricks of the trade with that loser part. So instead of looking whereas the victim mentality is much more focused on power dynamics between people, between individuals. Okay, so you'll hear in the language. Mark talked a lot about the language, but you'll hear it with the victim mentality. There's a lot of um, they did this to me, or because of this person, I'm feeling this way, or because if external event goes right, then Adam wins, right?
Right.
It's like, no, 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 no. Because if you look at this on a graph, and you could plot this on a graph, what happens is if you diagram that sentence, you are on the periphery of your own autobiography. It's like
Mm.
you're authoring your story, and all of a sudden you're putting yourself in the periphery, and someone else has control. That control center is someone else. So the government, your girlfriend or your wife or your husband or whatever, they're in the control, and if they take action, then you can win. Well, that's a victim mentality. That
Mm.
dynamic is that you're at the mercy of that. So, and now some people may be hearing this, and it's like, okay, well, it's pretty obvious when it's said like that. Yet, when you break down sentences that you may say or think in passing, um, you can see that the victim mentality has seeped in there sometimes, and you're basing the wealth of your existence on an external force, and that becomes very damaging. It becomes incredibly damaging because you're stuck. You're just perpetually stuck, and you're stuck searching for a hero to save you.
Mm.
Well, good luck, right? Because anybody who's if I actually found someone who said I was a hero, I'm going to save you, I would be the most suspicious person ever. Like, no way, because it's too good. It's like you.
Right.
There's no way you can have my best interest at heart. You're out here looking for victims to save.
Right.
You know, no. Occasionally, there are wonderful people out there that do good deeds and that will help you and that will assist you, and that, yes, that's great. And sometimes we will do that in our own lives. But to be constantly locked in that victim perpetrator, hero victim, tyrant victim dynamic, it's debilitating.
It sure is. Yeah, I mean, we all just had a wonderful growth experience in 2020 of antagonists all over the place that we could blame to be victim to if we like, right? Whether it's politicians or policy or government or a virus or whatever it might be, right?
Right.
Well, is that okay? A lot of this is reality. Some of it is fear or whatever else we want to take in terms of perception. But what can I do to control my own outcome? What can I control in my own day? What can I control in my emotions? How do I look at it? What's my reaction to it? Those are all taking control, right? Ways to take
Well,
control.
that's the whole thing of like we have this opportunity when the material world around us is a certain way. Okay, now we have to operate. We have to dance with it, right? So our only job is how we dance with the world around us. It's if we get to this thing, because it's always going to be doing its own thing. It's a very dynamic force. It's incredibly dynamic, in fact. Um, but back to the point with the victim mentality, it's interesting. There's a guy named Donald Miller. A lot of your listeners may know who this is. He is the author of the book Story Brand, and I saw him um, on a show recently, and he was talking about how in any hero victim villain dynamic, that in a story, the victim only serves one purpose. The victim serves the purpose of making the hero look good and the villain look bad. Because remember, the villain is the hero of their own story. Like Darth Vader is the hero of his version of the story of Star Wars. I mean, Voldemort is the hero of his version of Harry Potter. Okay. So we it's important to remember, if you put yourself in the victim position, you don't have a story. You're looking for a hero, you're looking for a victim, because otherwise you don't have a role in this story. And that's and that role sucks, by the way. If you've ever been in that situation. And by the way, Donald Miller also went on in that interview and said that we constantly are shifting dynamics throughout life. So versus it being a binary experience, is like, I'm a hero now, I'm always going to be a hero. Sometimes, even in one day, we'll be a hero, and then sometimes we'll be a victim, and sometimes we'll even be a villain. So it's important to remember that this is a dynamic thing. And for me, what Mark and I are attempting to do, and I believe we've done a little bit of this, uh, is to help educate people, give them tools to put themselves in a position to be in that hero role more and more every day, and to make it more mechanistic versus I'm at the whims. I'm subject to the whims of the external world around me. I can actually change a few things, how I speak, how I frame my situation, and to quote our friend Angela Cisco, to power dynamic shift, energy shift as we go through the world. And that's a very powerful tool to have it at our disposal.
Right. So, and you guys are doing that. Your primary tool is language, whether that's the language going on in our heads or that we're speaking or putting on paper. So another, I think mutual friend of ours, Chris Marhefka, recently said to me, was sharing the difference between I am dot 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 and I was taught to be, or I learned to be dot dot dot. Now, okay, that opens the door to I can learn something different. I can be something different. I can reconstruct, or I can write my own story. Right. That's the language helps with that
It's
opportunity.
crucial. Good on Chris. Yeah, he's a big part of our community. Mark likes to say when you use language tools like the one you just gave, the example you just gave, what you do is you're creating distance between
Mhm.
you and the story, right? Before it's here, it's I am, and it's right there, and you can't see past it. But if you can give it some distance, you can see it for what it is. It's a belief, it's a thought process, it's something that you were inherited. Someone dropped in there when you were
Right.
learning as a child, and you kept practicing it at it, and you got good at it. And and just like that, you can start practicing and get good at other things. So now we have options, and options equal freedom, and freedom is the name of the game.
Right. Now we have options, not only right in front of your face and you can't see around it, but again, I think in line with the victim mentality is maybe not seeing that you have options. You just associate to, well, either someone taught me that way, I inherited it, nature, nurture, and that's the perspective of I have no other option or it's too late. Whereas finding some
Exactly.
distance to see around that and see other options or outside the box or whatever metaphor we want, that would be the change in perspective or framework, right?
Well, we're creating space. I mean, this whole example is about creating space. And when we first started doing this work, we always considered it to be a type of yoga for the mind.
Mm.
And I know yogis, hardcore yogis, please forgive me there. I know yoga is a very much a mind and soul exercise. And let's say a cerebral type of yoga where you could actually go in and create more room to breathe, just like with yoga poses themselves, you're creating more space. So
Mhm.
now you can do more things. You can sit in different positions, move in different positions. You're more flexible. Well, the same thing with our thoughts. Get more flexible with our thoughts. Get more flexible with how we see ourselves in this world and how we see ourselves in different relationships. And what does that flexibility give us? It gives us freedom. It's like that Jocko Willink quote of discipline equals freedom. Well, guess what? Freedom gives us the opportunity to be creative. If you're stuck and you're rigid in your stories, you're stuck and you're rigid in your body, you have limited things you can do. And you're like that the guy who drops his keys and he reaches down for him and he's like a stiff board, versus someone who squats down and very freely and very cat like grabs it and goes about their business, right?
Yeah, I could see that. Like when I think about winning, you mentioned winning, right? And this shift in perspective between the internal and the external. And I completely agree that the victim by definition has to involve third parties. Whereas in reality, it's not a zero sum game. We are all at war with ourselves and being a better version of ourselves. And when I think about mastery, I love to explore people like yourself who are entrepreneurs. When we're seen as successful, success is never an event, it's a process. And it's often a long process. It's a very jagged path, just like our own self mastery journey, our human optimization journey. And in those zigs and zags, so yeah, sometimes we're winning or we feel like we're winning or we feel like we're making progress. But other times we may feel like we're not making progress or we literally failed. But we often say either you win or you learn, right? So in those failures, what are we learning? Like, you and I were talking off air about Spartan. I mean, I might as well be a brand ambassador. I've got the gear on and
Yeah.
I've got all these medals behind me, which my wife made me this medal board. These are all participation medals, right? I've never won a Spartan race or age category yet, unless you count the one that I was the only person in the race and I was both first and last. But I did complete all these races, one, right? So I won against myself. And that's the thing, right? Every time I go out there, my view on it is, am I getting better at an obstacle? Am I getting faster? Am I working on my endurance? Did I finish? Maybe despite what the world threw at me in weather and conditions and snow and altitude. And the biggest thing for me, being a father of a 13-year-old and a husband, is every one of those medals has a memory for me of the family being there at the finish line, cheering me on and to support me once I met my own internal win, right? I overcame something and I grew myself that day. So that's how I look at a lot of how I approach, whether it's a metaphorical, literal event like a race or other learning opportunities in life. So I don't know if I tie that back to the victim mentality, is that a healthier way to approach it? In that case, I don't know if I could ever be the victim because there is no third party.
You completed all those Spartan races?
I've got a whole box of medals that we
Oh
haven't
my
hung
god.
up on
See,
another board.
I mean, come on, man. You're the opposite of a victim. You know, I mean, I mean, I'm looking at this as an outsider, as someone who's yet to do something like that, and I know I'm aware of the rigor that's involved. And you know, my mom is a runner, and she started running later in life, around the age of 50, and she's completed, I believe, a dozen marathons now. And the
Nice.
last one she did, she was 63, I want to say. 62, 63, and she is an atypical runner in terms of body shape and size and things like that, and yet she does it. And for her, the concept of coming in first place of a marathon is like, that's so far behind. It's like, I want to get up, I want to train, and then I want to complete. That's the win. You know, like that's, it's the purest example we talked about before, about, you know, it's comparing yourself to who you were yesterday. Yeah,
Mhm.
you know the loser inside you, you know the person who could say no, you know that person. And sometimes it's okay to say no. You know, sometimes it's actually a better idea. But you know, sometimes when you do know that that's what you want and you go and you get it, man, that's really impressive. I mean, it's incredibly impressive. And back to your point about the things being, um it's not, it's versus it being a straight line for
Right.
success. You know, you brought that up, and I had this image when you said that of like a stock's volatility.
Right.
You know, and they always say, like, there's a great very famous Peter Drucker quote, that all profit is derived from risk.
Mm.
Right. So if you take the risk, you have to take the risk to get the profit. Like, the profit comes when you buy Amazon, when he's still like at the very beginning. Bezos is at the very beginning of the thing, and everyone's telling him it's going to fail, and they're only selling books.
Yeah,
The
when he's a used
profit,
bookstore.
absolutely, the profit is when I was first big into the Apple scene back in 2000, and Steve Jobs had just come back, and they were just introducing the iMac, and everyone thought that this is the dumbest thing. Apple was still going to go out of business. They're bankrupt. They're a terrible company. And oh, this iPod thing, whatever. That's when you go in and you get the profits, because you take a risk and you invest in those companies then, right? But if you stick with it, yeah, there's going to be a lot of ups, there's going to be a lot of downs, a lot of volatility. But if the trajectory ultimately, when you zoom out, is up, that's when you win. You just got to stick with it, and you got to know when to hold them, know when to fold them.
Yeah, that's a great point. Volatility is part of the fun of the ride, and it's where where the squeeze is for the juice. I don't always know when to fold them. I sold out of Apple stock at like $9 in 1996 before Jobs came back, and I just looked the other day at what that would look like today if I held that.
Oh
I probably
yeah,
had, I don't know, 50 shares or something. It would be something
it's probably
ridiculous
split
today.
5 times since then.
Oh, it's crazy. But, to even a finer point there, I would say, all these medals and the ones that are sitting in a box and ones, I was signed up for 50 races last year that all got canceled for COVID. And I've done everything from the 5Ks to a 50 kilometer, a 31-mile Spartan. And I'm also not a textbook runner by any means. I'm too big, I'm too heavy, and I actually just got I find running very hard, but I do a lot of it. I just got a running analysis done by a running coach. And luckily, I found out my form is all messed up. So there's all kinds of opportunity to get better at it. But I see the wins not even on race day. Race day is like when you show up and get your medal. You earn your medal, but it's the wins really are in all the days leading up to that where you trained to be there, which for me, that's how I motivate myself, right? Put these big hairy goals on the calendar, and then the win comes every day that I do get out and go for a run, even though it's cold, even though I don't feel like it. Or my son was doing last year, he did 20 burpees every day for all 366 days of last year. This year we're on 21 burpees a day. And it's like, well, I came home, I didn't do them this morning. I really don't feel like doing those burpees at 10 o'clock at night, but you know, you get them done and you find that consistency, like Jocko, right?
It's
It's the
so
discipline
inspiring.
and the consistency, but then there's freedom in that. So yeah, not only I think is it the winning against yourself and growing a little bit each time, but it's also the process. It's the daily grind.
You know, that's if you watch Mark's TEDx talk, we wrote that together. That one's on process versus results,
Mm.
and that you're talking about process. And you know, you hear the hippies say it all the time. Not the alpha hippies, just the regular hippies. They say, "Yeah, it's the journey, man. It ain't the destination, man." It's like, well, you know what? There's a lot to that. And that process of building up, like you say, to getting ready for that race, that the joy is there. Dude, I mean, everybody loves in Rocky Four versus Drago, when Rocky fights Drago, that training montage is like the number one scene, I would say, in the entire film. He's carrying that freaking log in the middle of Siberia or whatever. I mean, as a kid of the 80s, like I am, that memory is etched in my brain, you know, because it's the process of him transforming into something that Rocky has yet to ever be before. He's great now, but he's going to get even greater. And there's something about getting focused on the process, that day in, day out thing, um, that is just so in tune with what your mission is with this podcast and with what you're doing about mastery. It's that day-to-day stuff, you know, the event, the big day, the big game, you know, so what, you know, that's cool. That gives us a place to shoot for, but it really is that build up
It's
to
the
get there.
process. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're so right. Yeah, you're so right. The one of the when I tuned into that word, I think mastery was really there's this book by George Leonard about mastery where he talks about his study of the martial art of Aikido, and that the magic really isn't happening in those big sort of quantum steps or sea change, like leveling up in a belt test or something like that. Really, the growth is happening. You don't even see it. It's in those days where you're just practicing over and over and over again, building muscle memory, putting the reps in. It doesn't necessarily feel like it, but then ultimately it shows up. Right? It
Yeah.
shows up.
Yeah. And you know what? The key with the story and the language stuff is you can start programming yourself, to use a somewhat of a vulgar term. I use that word very rarely, programming, yet it is in some level, to really love that process.
Hmm.
Because it's so easy, because again, victim language, victim mentality language, it's all about the results. If this person does this, then I will feel end result, right? Nope, no. Hero language. I will continue this process, and I will get to my destination.
Now,
It's a reframe.
I'm going to raise my hand and say guilty, or call the flag on myself here. I think I said come home and have to do the burpees. I like to say I get to.
Get to. Yeah. 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 Because imagine if, I mean, I had a pretty serious injury. I blasted my kneecap into about 18 pieces.
Mm,
I was out for about 6 months, and it's still recovering. This is 3 years later.
geez.
Uh, and you think about the times when you have lack the use of your limbs, or you know, the full capacity of your body, and it's like, yeah, you get to, because it sucks. I mean, you think about all the people who have it so much worse, or if you know, you would be dying for it. And sometimes I go to this level where I'm thinking, you know, there's 90-year-old Adam. Let's say 90-year-old Adam is around. He's kicking. He's doing pretty well, and he's like, "Man, dude, I would give anything to go back and do a burpee." You know, like, let's hope that I'm actually in good enough shape at 90. I'm taking all kinds of meds and testosterone and HGH, whatever. I can do a great set of burpees at 90. But let's just say that if I was an average 90-year-old today, you know, it's like, what would I give to just do one burpee? You know,
One more burpee. I don't know if we'll ever miss the burpees.
that's true.
Those are
Bad
tough.
example.
Well, let's talk a little bit about, we'll shift gears here and just apply, language and growth and self-discovery and all this kind of stuff. I think of growth as, it can happen anywhere that you change perspective. That's how I think about it, and that's why I think it's so important to put yourself in uncomfortable situations, because whatever type of growth you think of, intellectual, physical, it's the next rep. Whatever it is, it comes from going beyond where you have been before. I have a passion for travel. You've been an expat. Let's talk a little bit about travel and getting uncomfortable or changing perspective in a way that helps us discover through travel.
Okay, great transition. And a great question, because what you just said, it hits on 2 points and they're intertwined. And you look at, again, I mentioned that Mark and I do story work and language work. Well, if you look at the archetypical Western style of storytelling, and according to Joseph Campbell, this is actually all of mankind. If you look back at the 3-act structure, the classic 3-act structure, and it's been distilled further. There's some guys who've written some great books on screenplays and screenwriting that have distilled it even further into the 3-act structure, and that's why so many films follow this. But the 3-act structure is essentially this: it's Act 1, and that is a thesis. Okay, everyone knows what a thesis is. It's the what is. It's here's my idea. This is who I am today. This is the person as it exists. And then Act 2 is antithesis, antithesis. So Act 2 being it's the world flipped upside down. Everything is opposite. So, and if you'll see this in movies everywhere. Act 1, Luke Skywalker is a young farm boy on Tatooine, and he's just doing his daily chores, and everything's normal and it's expected. And then Act 2, oh, I'm on a spaceship with pirates and a Wookiee and a guy show me how to use a lightsaber. Okay, it's completely different and it's uncomfortable. And he goes through a lot of struggle in that period. And you'll see this. I mean, Peterson talks about this too a lot. You'll see this in almost every major epic tale that's been out there. And then the third chapter is antithesis. I'm sorry, synthesis. So thesis, antithesis, and then Act 3, synthesis. Okay, synthesis meaning, what would you imagine? It's combining the thesis with the antithesis and to synthesize the old world and the new world into the world that we become, in the end. So why do I bring this up is because this plays into the concept of change that you mentioned, the growth. What is growth? How can we achieve growth? Well, I mean, getting out of comfort zones, that's basically Act 2, right? Doing things differently, completely different. And when you move overseas and you live overseas, and there's everyone speaking either a version of your language that's very basic, or you have to learn something so you can meet them halfway. That's what I did. I mean, I have family in Thailand. My father is Chinese ethnically, but his grandparents or my grandparents moved to Thailand when the communist regime was taking over in China. But they all live in Thailand, and I decided to go back over when I was in my late 20s and reconnect and live over there. And I grew up in the States, and I spoke very little of the language. I knew decent amount of just a little bit about the culture. And I was like, screw it, I'm gonna go over there. I'm gonna live. And that was antithesis. Everything was upside down. How you pay your electric bill, your, how you conduct any type of lifestyle thing. You just, everything is different culturally, the food, manners, expectations. And it was awesome. And it was also very uncomfortable at times.
Right.
And now I'm back here after, nearly a decade over there, all told. And I'm synthesizing both of those experiences of being a young adult here and then being an adult there and now being, an older adult now. And I learned a lot. And when it's interesting because I've come back to the States at a time where there's a lot of cultural disruption. The U.S. that I left was much more stable, it seemed, culturally. And now I'm back and everyone seemingly is going crazy about something. They're offended or they're upset or they want change about, and they want the country to change for them and by the way, some people have a very good reasons for this change and this feeling of frustration. I get all that. Uh, it's it's so synthesizing that experience and looking at the culture that exists now is been very interesting, and it's actually given me a very unique perspective on it, because while some people, let's say, want to tug you in one direction or tug me in one direction, some people want to tug me in the other direction. I'm like, dude, I've got my very unique perspective on all this, because I see how other countries operate and how they work and what other people are like, and like, for example, you come back and they're saying, the United States is the most racist country in the world. And you're like, you have no idea what you're talking about. In Thailand, they are racist against each other. Like, I mean, like, it's the same people there. It's like, oh, this person is one shade darker than me, I hate them, or I think less of them. And it's just like, you are the same person. um it's really incredible what that perspective has given me with and just all the, I know a lot of immigrants here in the States, and of course my family, my dad, is an immigrant. Um, and what the immigrant mentality, what they see is they see all the opportunity and possibility, and so they have a different perspective on the United States than I would say people who have been here for 3 or 4 generations would
Mm,
have, and
yeah.
so maybe to tie this in a nice little bow, I would say living overseas has been fantastic. It's great for perspective. I would highly suggest anybody listening to this do it if you have the opportunity, and stay long enough. Because if you stay for 6 months, you're a visitor, you're a tourist. You stay a year, you're a tourist. Stay for like 5 years if you can't. Stay for a while. Make it like, get to hate it a little bit where you're at. Okay. And then synthesize that information back. And when you're back here and you're living amongst a very wide variety of people, do your best to understand that everybody's got a different story. They're
Mm,
looking at this, at the same thing from a bunch of different perspectives, and try your best to appreciate that other person's perspective, even if you are, if you've been um, prompted to hate them or to be upset about them, or to call them evil or bad. Just like, understand that they're coming from a different perspective. And that's, I'd say that's one of the main lessons that I learned living abroad. That was a very
yeah.
long-winded answer to your question, Michael. Thank you for.
No, no, no. That's great. Really well said, right? Let's recognize that we're not all the same. And that's great because there's so much interesting stuff in diversity and valuing other perspectives and exploring them, right? Not just shutting them off by some preconception. So when you if we take some of this back to language and story and tie that into the way that the three actor that Joseph Campbell describes it. So did you go away with one set of stories and adopt some new stories, and then are you synthesizing a new language for yourself when you come back, or how does that look?
Oh, 100%, man.
Yeah.
Like, the stories, the Adam that went over there and the Adam that came back, it sounds like I'm like in a Vietnam movie, right? It's like one of those, like, no, I was over in the jungle. It's like, no, it wasn't that dramatic. With that said, it was transformative in that, like I said, just a perspective shift. And I traveled a lot when I was over there. I went to, Nepal and to Japan a lot. I went a few times, Singapore, Malaysia. I spent a lot of time in these places. And even in Thailand itself, I lived in a bunch of different places within the country. So I got to get a lot of those different perspectives and experiences. So the story aspect of it is, again, that, back to the yoga and the flexibility of the mind, that's really the differentiator. There is the understanding that there is no such thing as the truth. There's a lot of different perspectives, there's a lot of different ways to do it, and there are better ways sometimes, and then there are worse ways. There are more accurate descriptions of things and there are less accurate descriptions, but ultimately there are many different possibilities and reads on a situation, and that ultimately creates that freedom of the ability to see your own story and the stories going on in your head about different people and different situations, because you realize that that little nasty word, the truth, is really is that word should be used like I mean very sparingly, because it's very rare that that's it's accurate.
Right. If anything, maybe there is a truth at a point in time for each of us on any given thing, right?
Something
Maybe,
like that,
maybe.
something more spiritual, something more, something deeper in the heart space
Right.
versus, fact checkers or something like that. It's like, come on, man.
Snopes.com or
Snopes, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. But what's true for me today may not be true for me tomorrow, right? As I grow, as my perspective changes. I'll give you a couple quick travel stories of my own on perspective. Like I love Nepal. That's one of my favorite places. I was I did the Annapurna circuit, like the 2 week
Oh,
trek.
really? Yeah.
Yeah, and I was
Good for
coming
you.
around and coming back down towards Jomsom,
Uh-huh.
and one of the last nights in a village in a tea hut, and you end up kind of walking with other people in terms of you're going to go a certain distance every day, and maybe they're kind of on the same pace, and so you end up in the same villages or the same huts each night. So over the course of a couple of weeks, you get to kind of know these different people. Well, on one of these last nights, I'd already found my hut, my bed, my bucket of cold water for the night for my semi bath. And one of these other travelers I found was arguing with the innkeeper, basically the person, the home that was going to rent us bunks or beds. And effectively, in the end, what it came down to is they were haggling over an amount of money that was probably very meaningful for this person's business that lives in the mountains of Nepal. But to put it in US dollar terms, it was the equivalent of a nickel. They were arguing over 5 cents, right? So massively different perspective. And you can get that person was so hung up in arguing over the local currency equivalent that was, maybe that's 10,000 of the local currency, but they were hung up on it. And it's like, well, what if we just stop and change perspective back, right? For a second. Or here's my other one. I realize that I came to realize this again recently, that I have very poor hip mobility. As as Westerners, we sit too much and we don't squat very much. So I realized this 20 years ago as well, traveling in Asia and especially Nepal, coming to use squat toilets for the first time. And
Oh,
that was a
yes.
struggle from a hip mobility perspective, just to be able to squat and be comfortable in that position. But then also it's like, I don't love this. I'm not liking so much the hole in the dirt. And then later in the same trip I was on, I came across a squat toilet in Greece that was actually in a nice clean bathroom facility, and the squat toilet was all made out of porcelain, and it had a flush mechanism, and it had in the porcelain it was ridged so that your feet didn't slip. You had nice
Uh-huh.
traction, and I thought, man, this toilet is brilliant. I love this toilet. I love this squat toilet.
Upgrade. Yeah, premium squat toilets.
Premium squat
Uh,
toilet. But again, it's
yeah.
just different perspective.
Well, you had to have that initial experience of essentially the hole in the ground to appreciate the premium ceramic quality of that Greek squat toilet.
That was
You
my
know, we
synthesis.
exactly that was your synthesis, right? That's well, you know about the Squatty Potty, right?
Right.
Yeah, they have that now. Well, apparently, it's the best way, most natural way for us to defecate is to
Yeah.
do a little squat, make it
Right.
happen, and the Thais have their style, the Indians have their style. Uh, you're right, and for some people who, if they spend their entire lives, here in this culture, they're thinking that's so primitive. Really, we may find out in 5 years from now it's definitively it's going to add 3 years to your life if you squat, or cut
Right.
your risk of colon cancer or whatever down by 50%. I don't know, but then
Right.
you got to get on the train.
Yeah, I'm on the train. We got a house full of squatty potties, compliments of Ben Greenfield. I found out from that guy.
Oh, nice,
He's all
excellent.
about the squatty potty.
Yep.
Yeah, no, you're right, right? It's like why be closed-minded to what in some cases might be ancient wisdom. Going back to like the yogic stuff and the energetic stuff. There's so much that we feel like we need to invent anew when there's so much practice and knowledge out there that we could tap into.
The toys are nice, they're fun, modern toys are nice. At the end of the day, though, eating real food, breathing,
Right.
movement.
Right.
I mean, great times with friends, sunshine, clean air. I mean, let's face it, that's the real winning ticket, you know? I mean,
Hmm.
I mean, I trust me, I got an Apple Watch on now. I think that's cool. I think there's some fun stuff that, we got our phones and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, as we get more mature, we start sensing what's authentically legit and what's all just extra, you know?
Right.
It's all that free ancient stuff that still holds up, you know?
Exactly. I think everything on the list you just mentioned is free or practically free.
Yeah, yeah,
Right. Yeah.
yeah.
No, that's fantastic. So I'm 49. I'll be 50 this year. And I often end up saying that I'm damn near 50 and I'm really just now learning to breathe or breathe properly or relearning to breathe. I believe we all come into this world knowing how to breathe properly and we
Mhm.
lose it somewhere along the way by a number of things. And so
Were you a chest breather, Mike?
I have been a chest breather. I've been a
Oh,
mouth breather.
a mouth and chest
Mouth and
breather.
chest. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we've all been there before. I know I
I
have.
I was. Yeah. Still trying to conquer it in terms of, at night in my sleep. But yeah, I saw a great little quote the other day is mouth breathers are underachievers.
Oh, but that's also comparing other people. That's a little hey, that's a little like pointing that way. How about this? If I mouth breathe, I underachieve. Let's
There
turn
you
it
go.
back on us. Let's
There
reflect
we
that
go.
back
I
on
like
us.
that.
You see? What's a
I
little
like
bit
that.
more personal responsibility there versus shitting on some other person.
I like that. I like that. Yeah. In fact, I'm going through a breathing course right now that is not only about, typically nostril breathing, but it's more mechanical. So we are working on really strengthening and flexibility for the belly breathing. So strengthening diaphragm, intercostal muscles in the ribs, certain stretches during breathing to open up more space, volume. So not only breathing nasally, nostrily, but into the low belly and having more volume access there because we start to get tight in those rib muscles like we do in the rest of our muscles as we
Did
age.
you bring this up just because you know about Mark and I, how we our three
Not at
prong
all.
method, our triangle is words, stories, breath.
Not at
Did you
all.
know
I
this?
did not
Oh
know
wow.
about the third leg.
It's breath, it's
Breath.
breathing. Because if you try it, if you are breathing deep into your belly, it's relaxed, low and slow, as Mark says. I mean, the quality of your thoughts, the amount of reactions, unconscious reactions, go down, way down.
Right.
You can
Way
feel it.
down.
The stories get cleaner. You're allowed to these thoughts. If you practice this story and language work, and something comes up in that process that's it's tough to deal with, or you may not want to admit, say it slower and breathe low and slow, and let it sink in. Mark is a genius at this right now. We work with another guy, Brandon Powell. I'll give a shout out to, who's Wim Hof's #1 trainer is in the United States, and he leads all our breathing programs and our
Nice.
coaches certification. And it's just breath, story, words. Do those three again, practically free. When I say practically, you do have to sign up for our coaches program.
Right.
Once you
Right.
do that,
Yeah.
it's free for forever.
It's free after that.
Yeah.
Let's get back to this, but yeah, completely agree. Talking about creating space, right? Nothing better than low, slow breathing to create some space and awareness
Mm-hmm.
internally and externally. So I know you guys, I did not know that you incorporate breath into your coaching, which is amazing. I've done some of, after talking to Mark, some of the Enlifted course and some of the Procabulary, and love what you guys are doing. Let's meander back towards coaching and how you enable coaches. You yourself, I think you've got a great bit of experience over the last couple decades for coaches who are listening, right? Who may already be coaches in another discipline or domain. It's such a busy space, right? Whether you're an Enlifted coach or an Unbeatable Mind coach or ex coach, Wim Hof coach, we're all competing in this. Although, again, language competing is probably the wrong word. I don't think this is a zero sum game. And I firmly believe that there is a there's far more demand or need than supply. Everybody needs a coach, more than one coach in different disciplines. And I hope we wake up to that in this society. Nonetheless, for coaches, let's talk a little bit about the experience you've got in developing online brands, whether that's social media, YouTube. What is important for a brand, particularly for a coach, in setting themselves up for success in delivering the value in the way they want to serve?
Well, it's a great transition, great question. I thought about this a lot. I thought about this concept a lot because you hear it from a lot of coaches when they come into, or I hear it from a lot of coaches. I'm sure you do hear it too. And they wonder if the marketplace is too saturated. Do they have what it takes? A lot of imposter syndrome stuff comes up. And I saw this billboard in Austin, Texas. It was 10 years ago now, and it said everyone is someone's type. And I thought about that for a long time, and I was thinking, this goes back to the concept of defining a niche.
Hmm.
Okay, that's part of it. Making sure that you're speaking to a very specific person that you can upgrade. Okay, that's part of it. Dialing into your niche, versus saying I can help everybody. No, no, no. You're going to help one type of person, one type of client. Okay, that's going to be your niche. Okay, that's part one. And then part two is, when I hear the word coach, and Mark and I are starting to tweak the copy on our own site and how we pitch this to our customers. Um, I I believe that word is good. It's a good start, and it starts a conversation. So to go back to Donald Miller's story brand, he always says position yourself as the guide. If you're in your brand, if you're starting a company and you're pitching your brand, who you are as the hero, you're doing it all wrong. Okay. You got to pitch yourself as the guide.
Hmm.
You're Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're Dumbledore, right? Your customer is Harry Potter. So your coaching client is Harry Potter. Your coaching client is Luke Skywalker. Okay. And your job is you're going to help unleash the power within them. You're going to transform them. And remember, people don't buy a coach, they don't buy a course, they buy transformations. Remember, people people buy results. Back to that thing, right?
Right.
People, it's rarer for people to buy processes. So you have to front door the transformation that you're going to help them facilitate, because they're going to become the next level. Okay.
Right.
You're going to help guide them because you've been down the road. You're the grizzled mentor. You've seen it. You're the wise sage. Okay. So, number one, make sure you're positioning yourself as a guide and think of yourself that way. So you're selling the transformation, and once they get into your process, they're going to start to really love the process, and your refined process is what's going to keep them with you. The transformations going to get them in the door. So I think really understanding from a marketing perspective, if you are a coach, a making certain that you position yourself correctly, and b um, making sure that you understand marketing basics, because I I think it's Seth Godin, who's a very famous author when it comes to marketing. He talks about how everyone, either you are a marketer or you're going to be out of business soon. Like if you're an entrepreneur, you have to understand this stuff. And there's a lot of resistance to understanding this stuff. If you're like this purity person who just wants to do their product or their service, and then you have to understand the marketing aspect.
Right.
And you have to meet people where they are in the buying process, because if you're talking to someone and the conversation in their head is different than what you're talking about. So for example, Mark and I used to lead with, hey, this language story, isn't that cool? And it was like, screw the tech, no one cares about that. Here's what they're worried about: they're in a bad relationship, their business is failing, they've got chronic health problems, they're depressed, they can't get a date. Just think about like the surface level problem a person is having, and then figure out where on that awareness scale that they are, and then have that conversation with them. Um, and if you do that, if you have a winning product, a winning service, a winning process in this example, they're going to stick with you, right? But that you got to have that initial conversation on their terms. So I would say that's number one. Um, is to differentiate yourself, and also as a coach, if you are a coach, remember you're coaching not just athletes, you're not just coaching students. You can coach leaders, because leaders require coaches.
Right.
How many coaches, quote unquote, does LeBron James have, to keep him at the top of his game? Um, you think about, and we use the word coach in American sports, head coach of a football team, but in Britain, it's a manager,
Right.
right? It's a leader. That's all. You're just a leader. That's what you are. So I would say just getting your head around the fact that you're a leader, and you train leaders, you help grow leaders, you guide leaders to their transformation, and then to make sure you pick a niche, you serve that particular person versus serving everybody. It's a very specific person you can transform, and go with that. So there you go. There's my there's my
That's great.
roadmap.
Yeah, no,
Like,
that really resonates with me. I think about a couple things you mentioned there. I think about it in my experience in the consulting world. One is there have to be problems you're solving. So I think that's some of what you mentioned in terms of extrapolate
yes,
from the tech and the process. Let's focus on the problems we're solving. And I always thought of my job as I am here, as you said, with a guide, right? I am here to make my clients successful and then disappear, right? Ultimately, once I enable them, I get out of their way. When it comes to marketing, a branding and marketing guy that is a friend of mine I really respect, he ties all of it back to emotion, right? So, what is the emotion that comes along for what that client defines as success? And what's the emotion that comes along with removing problems or barriers? That's what we buy, right? We buy how it
well,
feels.
my mentor Jeffrey Gitomer, the guy I mentioned earlier, he has a great saying, and his quote is, "People buy emotionally and they justify rationally." So this is why you got to have both. You got to have some tremendous emotional. That's why I use the word transformation, because transformation is emotional. People, they see themselves transforming. There's an emotion baked into that, right? So you dial into the emotion, then you got to have the goods to back it up, so that then they can feel comfortable justifying it rationally.
Right.
So both. I would say both. But
Both.
yeah, you're right. If you only have a rational offer, if it's very stereotypical, like a German, like a stereotypical German offer, this is what you get. Well, good luck selling that very wide. It better be the best engineered thing on the planet. That's, by the
Right.
way, I mean, right. I mean, that's kind of how that works. Otherwise, you got to have some sort of emotional connection that can be polarizing, that can create some sort of polarization. So it's an um, Mark calls that, I believe he uses the word polarizing, or some sort of
Hmm.
polarity. I'm sorry, that's
Okay.
the word. It's a polarity. You have to create polarity that can draw people in.
Yeah, if it were a German ad, it would just say something like, "You must be an enlifted coach." Period.
Yeah, yeah. Sans serif font, then some specs down below with some graphs, right? Some
Right.
charts.
Some charts, yeah,
Yeah.
up into the right, maybe a little volatility.
Right. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Yeah, thank you for sharing some of those keys. I know you do have a lot of experience, kind of the guy behind the guy, and we had Mark on a little bit more of the face of the Enlifted coaching brand, and also the Procabulary process. So why don't we bring things together on that? Is share a little bit more about how people tend to get involved, what kind of people are attracted to Enlifted, who's it for, how do we get in touch and learn more?
Well, hey, back to my thing. And lifted
Yeah,
is for leaders. If you lead a
leaders.
team, if you're a manager or someone in leadership in your company, it's if you are a coach, a life coach, a health coach. We have a lot of teachers that have become Enlifted certified coaches. We have military veterans that have become certified coaches with us. We use the term certified coach. That's our program. Again, everyone's a coach. They're coaching themselves. They're a coach in their relationship on some level. They're a leader in their space. And what we're doing in that coaches certification is really defining and enabling our students to have those tools available to them, the very powerful tools we talked about earlier, Mike, the story and the language tools, to have at their disposal and to use them when challenges arise, when when every word matters. We talk about getting a much better ROI on your words, okay? A return on your investment. So instead of like your words just being a constant money pit, just they keep talking yourself into problems and stupid ideas and bad patterns. Nah, get an ROI. Your words talk you into good stuff that keep performing for you year after year. And whether that's in with your team, like I said, in a business situation, whether that's just personal on a personal level. So, I mean, that first Enlifted Coaches certification, go to our website, enlifted.me, check it out. You can schedule a discovery call with Mark. I'm telling you, so many tears, both of the tears everyone knows about and the tears of joy,
Yeah.
right? That happen in that process, because you get to share a lot of these very deep things that, students go into this process and they have these stories and they're thinking, okay, I'm going to talk about this. Okay. And then a couple of word changes and a couple of deep breaths and a couple of word changes and a couple of deep breaths. And next thing you know, it's just, it's powerful. And man, the quality of people that are in that certification and the transformations that we're seeing, it's incredible. I mean, listen, it's taken, we got 150 coaches that have gone through this process now, and I feel this comfortable saying it now. Like I feel comfortable because I've seen it 150 times. It works, and Mark does tremendous work with all of our coaches. So yeah, check us out there. And if you want to just get a better idea of what we're doing and what the community is all about, go to Instagram at Enlifted Coaches. And we've got a great social media manager, Kimberly, there, who's doing great work, and hit her up and you'll see what we're all about.
Perfect. Thank you for that. Let me ask one thing before we put a button on that is certification. Would you ever fail someone? Right. 'Cause I do think some people look at, there are a lot of different coaching brands, specialties, focuses. Are they just rubber stamped, right? Would you ever fail someone, or would you delay their certification until they meet your qualifications? Do you have sort of a QC or an exit process?
There's an old adage in the movie industry that goes 90% of directing is casting. Okay. If you get that, what that means, it's
Yeah.
that so the qualification process happens before they enroll, or as they enroll, I should say, because they come in, and if someone's a iffy fit, we ask that they reconsider, or we ask that they delay, and we give them some tips, and we say, this is going to be a good fit for you eventually. Right now we ask that you take a pass. And the people who go through it, if you make it to the end of this thing, you're certified because you're going through it, and you felt all the feels, as Mark will say in the cert. And yeah, and we've had 50% of the people thus far go on to level 2 with us. So that we have 3 levels: level 1, level 2, level 3. Level 3, we do more business development stuff. Level 2 is about building up all the stories up from the rubble of level 1. So level 1's about breaking it down. Level 2 is about building it back up anew, and forge it strong. And then that level 3 is really more practical business development. Um, if you can get through level 1, you're certified. I mean, because yeah, Michael, you'll see when you come in and become a certified coach.
I look forward to it. Yeah, that would be the same adage, right? As you make your profit on the buy, not the sell,
Absolutely.
right? Yeah, make sure
Absolutely.
you got the right match going in. And I'm glad you guys have that. And kudos, by the way, of having the business development piece of it as well, because there are so many coaches that have a passion and they want to serve and they've got such a talent for it, but then they're really not coaches if they don't have clients that they're helping, right? So if you don't develop a business out of it, it's a dead end.
It's there's so much to learn. There's so much to learn, and we want to give all of our coaches a foundation level tool set. to make sure that the foundation is there. Because a lot of it's just sticking with it. You know, what they say, like 50% of the businesses people start are gone within a year.
Right.
So we want to make sure, you know, Mark and I have been through it. I mean, we should be, one day we're going to be on the company, or I'm sorry, the cover of Slow Company magazine, as Dave Ramsey says. Try to get your company on the cover of Slow Company magazine, because it started really slow. It was 3-4 years of like, okay, well, we're doing this. Is it going to be a thing? And then by year 5, once we started figuring some stuff out, and we were like, oh, okay, this is going to work. So a lot of those lessons we're distilling down,
Right.
and relaying to our coaches and giving them the stuff we wish we'd have had 5
Yeah.
years ago or 6
Right.
years ago,
Right.
whatever it was.
Well, I love the work you guys are doing. You're both magical. I know Mark shows up more in front of the brand, but congratulations. I appreciate what you guys are doing. And Lifted.me, I'm excited for you guys. It really is. Mark uses the word abracadabra. You guys have some magical stuff going on. I'm even more psyched now that I know you got the breath component of it. So we'll definitely get links up in the show notes for this episode to all your pages, all your social, and yeah, discovery call with Mark England. You can't go wrong with that.
Oh yeah. Hey, translation, you can go right.
You can go right with that. And you should.
You should. Yeah.
You should.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you so much, Adam. I enjoyed it.
Take care.